I've read about 43 books this year so far, and I want to share with you the top 5 classic books that had the most impact on my reading experience this year. Starting off with 1984 by George Orwell. Now, this book completely blew my mind, right? I mean, it had me questioning everything I knew about social media, anything I knew about the internet in general, about our political landscape. I mean, I read it and I was like a wreck for about a week afterwards. Like I couldn't stop talking about it. So I think this is about as relevant today as it was the day when it was written. So highly, highly recommend. Next on the list is The Master and Margarita. Boom, by Mikhail Bulgakov. Now, when it comes to Russian literature, when you talk about Russian literature, a lot of people, associate it with Tolstoy or Dostoevsky or Pushkin, like that have very, very heavy writings, very emotional writings, very philosophical writings. And not to say that that The Master and Margarita doesn't have all of those things, but it's also funny as hell. Like, so I literally laughed out loud probably about 10 times while reading this book. So for me, this is essentially the greatest crossover in Russian literature. For me, this is essentially like if Terry Pratchett brought the Discworld to Russia and decided to make fun of the Russian aristocracy at that period, this would be the product. So if you're a fan of very sort of satirical writing, I think you'd really, really enjoy this. The next on the list is Tess of the D'Urbervilles, and I completely butchered that pronunciation, but I don't care. A lot of people have recommended this book to me over the years, and I finally understand why. So I think that much like 1984, this book is, the message of the book is about as relevant today as it was, when it was written, in the sense that women today go through, many of the same struggles, especially when it comes to toxic relationships, spousal abuse, parental expectations, societal expectations, and, just all those everyday battles that life throws your way. And, things just keep piling and piling and piling and piling until you reach your breaking point. And, at that time, when you reach your breaking point, this book genuinely had me question, at the end, would I have done the same as Tess? And yeah, it's a very thought-provoking book. Highly, highly recommended. I mean, definitely became one of my all-time favorites after this year. Now, the next on the list is Robin Hood, The Merry Adventures of Robin Hood, by Howard Pyle. Now, this book, and by the way, gorgeous edition, like absolutely gorgeous edition. So what I knew of Robin Hood mainly came from movies, TV shows, the old school animations. So genuinely, I had this idea of Robin Hood in my head, like this almost not even an anti-hero, right? This misunderstood hero, right, that stole from the rich, gave to the poor, everybody loved him. He was adored, by his people. Man, the book can be nothing further from the truth. I mean, and that's what I absolutely loved about it. So not only is Robin Hood not the hero that we all think he is, he barely qualifies as an anti-hero on several occasions. And also we have this preconception that Robin Hood always comes out on top. He constantly scuffles with the Sheriff of Nottingham, and he always devises some clever way to get on top. Again, nothing further from the truth. He gets his ass whooped by almost every single person he meets. His half-thought schemes are like always landing him in trouble. It's hilarious to read. Like I absolutely adored it. So highly, highly recommend you check this one out. Finally, for my last book from the top 5 classics I've read this year, is this, again, awesome edition for the greatest short stories from Tolstoy. Now, I think like this has been probably one of the best reads I've had this year out of like all the 43 books so far. And the reason behind it is that It's a collection, essentially a collection of short stories written by Tolstoy, but they're put in a chronological order, right? So you get to experience his writing from when he was a young man, essentially full of all these ideas and ideology and vigor. It really reflects, especially in his earlier short stories that read almost like Aesop's fables, where you have somebody, if somebody didn't do something, he wouldn't have that effect, and there's always like a learning experience in the end. So for example, if the villager didn't do this, this wouldn't have happened, he would have lived happily ever after, right? So they always have like a teaching moment at the end. And then, as he gets older, as he matures, the writing takes a lot more a lot more warlike tone. Well, maybe not warlike, but a lot more revolutionary tone, so to speak. He gets these sort of ideas woven into the writing, that really tell the plight of the Russian peasantry at that period, and what essentially needs to be done, and essentially what happened in history for the Russian peasantry to sort of live in a better state. And towards the end of the book, the last stories, they're written, towards the end of Tolstoy's life. And that's when he finds religion and really focuses on philosophy and on spirituality. And it really, really reflects in the writing, because you can see that, he really starts to question everything that he's done so far, everything in his life, and the battles that his, protagonists are fighting in these stories. These spiritual battles, they're the same battles and the same demons that he was struggling with towards the end of his life. So for me, this was a book that was really a window into the mind of one of the greatest literary minds of all time. And, you get to experience his personal growth through his own eyes, which is incredibly fantastic, to be honest. So again, highly recommend. So these were my top 5 classics that I've read for 2025. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you've read any of them. What are your favorite classics that you've ever read or that you've read this year? And let me know if you want me to make more videos from the same series.